Alright, so a few years ago, back when wreckers was still a thing in this bloody town, I went to a local wreckers and found a manual R31 sedan, and I pulled a whole bunch of stuff out of it. I think actually that was one of the things I pulled out of it. But anyway, I got the manual 31 transmission to engine bolts, and I've been looking for these for years. And as I was building my cousin's 31 with him, I was digging through a box of parts, and sure enough, I found them. So finally, I get to put proper factory R31 manual bolts into my bell housing and into the engine, so that's going to be great. So all these other random ones that I've just had lying around over the years, some of them aren't even factory 31 bolts, they're just like 16mm ones, which always gives me the shit, are going in the bin or back in the parts box. So factory bolts make me happy. Alright, so when you go to slap a manual back in a car, you got to make sure you put a couple of bits of grease on some bits and pieces. So the pivot for the clutch fork, as well as the slide for the release bearing, are great things to put grease on, and then these little edges here where the clutch fork rides. So it just stops any sort of damage occurring between the parts when they run dry or anything like that. And if you can manage it, also a clutch fork boot. Fortunately this one's damaged there, but it's better than nothing. So I'm just going to run that, throw these two in, and then I'll put the gear shifter in after the transmission's in the car. A little bit of grease here, even a dust cap for the end. Okay, so you can see that's all assembled, moves back and forth nicely. So pretty much now the transmission's ready to go in the car. These are heavy transmissions, and the best way I've found to do them is you jack the front of the engine up so it tilts the back of it down. You don't need to loosen engine mounts or anything like that. And then you put the flywheel cutout up into the trans tunnel first, and then once it's high enough you can sort of get the input shaft on and locate it and everything, and then you roll it down into position afterwards. I find if you put the starter motor cutout to the bottom, it doesn't quite work as well, but to the top seems to work really well. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm by myself. This is the first time I've done one by myself. Usually I've got someone on the jack because I can get them to lift and lower the engine as I need, but nobody's here, so if I die, this is my goodbye note. The Wagon killed me with its stupid heavy gearbox that I can't move by myself enough. So give it a whirl, don't do it at home by yourself, do it with a friend. Alright, so the transmission's in. I've just got to tighten up some bolts and put in the cross member. It wasn't too difficult. It's all about how you hold your tongue. It's the best advice I ever got. Had no idea what it meant until I figured it out, and then it's like, yes, it is how you hold your tongue for some reason. So anyway, the rain has relatively stopped for now, but geez, the humidity's picking up. I'm sweating like an absolute mongrel. I can't tell if it's sweat from, if I'm wet from rolling around on the ground or if it's sweat from putting the gearbox in. It is ridiculous. But anyway, I managed to score another booster for 20 bucks. Thanks to my mate Sam for picking that up. Thanks to my old boy for picking it up from Sam. And yeah, so I should be able to get that changed out to a 33 booster, which I believe is deeper, but it should still fit. Hopefully it'll clear the Brakemaster cylinder stopper. And the benefit of it is it's got twin diaphragms, so it gives a softer pedal feel or a easier pedal feel. It's still direct, but it's just not as strenuous, I guess. Just makes the car easier to drive. So excited to see what that turns out like. This bracket likely won't be able to be used because it has the holes cocked, obviously, so maybe I can remake that and cock it that way. We'll see what happens. But for now, I'll probably just take it off. It's not like this really needs to be supported that much. Other than that, yeah, I'll just do up the gearbox. So all the bell housing bolts, the reverse light, the slave cylinder, the speedo line. I got to put the speedo sender back in, the gear boot and everything, and then the tail shaft. And well, I'll do the tail shaft later. But the other job I want to do today is get the diff in. So hopefully this is easier. I'm gonna clearance the panhard rod bracket a little bit because this gets really, really close to it. So I'd like to just fold that over a little bit just to make life a little easier. And then I get to test out my handbrake. So I'll oval those a little bit once the diff's in and test fit them and everything. And then once it's all in, I'll give the handbrake a rip and see what happens. Hopefully it works, because otherwise it'll be fun carrying a brick everywhere. So we're getting close. Today's also Friday the 7th of February, which is my birthday. So I don't know what else I'd be doing. Last year I was putting those coilovers in on my birthday. This year, rolling around in the wet, slamming a gearbox and diffing the old girl. She appreciates the love. So for some reason with these Ryobi rattle guns, if you ever get, same with the 3/8 drive one, or at least these generation of them, whenever you get them a bit too wet, these tri-beam lights stay on all the time. So if we pull the battery out, they'll turn off, and then if we put it back in, use it once, and then they just don't turn off again. Sometimes they come straight on as soon as you plug the battery in, but yeah, I don't know why, they just don't turn off anymore. After it dries out a bit more, it starts working again. I guess water's across some connections that are turning them on, but yeah, so if they ever get wet, just make sure you leave the batteries out of them so they don't drain the batteries and don't fry your circuit boards, although they're probably fucked anyway, but whatever. It's a work tool, right? Yeah. Alright, so here's the transmission speed sender, whatever, for the dash. These are, I don't know, that's the MX-7 one that I've found that works. I don't know how many teeth are on that one. Have a look at it, see if you can count them. Anyway, this is the most accurate for at least the tyre size I have, which is like a 215, 5515 or something. Speedo with 31 I've ever seen. However, when it gets to 90-ish kilometers an hour, it starts just doing whatever it wants. I don't know why. The speed sender I used is out of an auto, so the old one I had, one of the wires just disconnected. This one's much nicer. Just stole it out of my cousin's car. Oops. Anyway, the last transmission, the last MX-7, I tried to put this in. Didn't want to give it back and actually destroyed the O-ring, so I have a new one, got to grab that. But in the process of getting it out, I was very frustrated. I might have galled the threads a little bit, so I'm going to pick them clean. Hope that this screws on, it's all plastic, so you can just fuck it and that'll be fine. And then slam this back in, get the little retention thingy, which goes here with the O-ring, put a bit of lube on that, make sure the hole's clean, and straight in, should be good to go. Alright, so we're just going to give this a light touch up with a big hammer. That's much better. So now we should have ample clearance to put our strut in and adjust our collar thing. Sorry about how dark that was, but anyway, you get the idea. Once you have assembled your diff and you go to move it, get a friend to help, because both Luke and I have got ruined backs because we're 6'5" and 6'6", and this diff would weigh well over 100 kilos, and we do not train deadlifts enough to lift this on our own, but we do it anyway. So don't do that, get a friend, get a trolley jack, wheel it around, don't just deadlift it like a savage and hurt your back. It's bad, you only get one back, but you can get another diff if you fucking break it somehow. Alright, so here's the part I'm quite excited for, the upper trailing arms for the rear of the wagon. So pretty much these replace the fixed length upper trailing arms on a 31, and the idea of these is that as the car gets lowered, the arms sort of stay in the same length and it forces the diff to pivot down, whatever. The upper arm is shorter than the lower arm, so it has a shorter arc radius, so it forces the diff pinion down. So with those arms you can extend the length of them and that will raise the diff pinion up, keeping your universal joint angles correct. So those ones can go longer than those ones, which will make that not jam into the ground. So very excited for those. Hit up RB Factory if you need them. He's only got limited stock. This was probably made well before he ran out, but sorry, this is probably released well after he's run out of them. But if you keep messaging him, I'm sure he'll give some more. Anyway, those are awesome. Alright, so when you get these, they'll have a zip tie around the end, and that's to keep the spaces from falling out. So clip the zip tie at the end that you're about to install and install it. You'll also notice that this jam nut here does not have marks on it, so from a big smear of grease, but there's no marks. But the other end does have marks. So the ones with the nicks in them are reverse thread. So if you go lefty-loosey, it'll actually be lefty-tighty. So I'm going to install the right-handed threads into the diff because it will be harder to see these ones, and then the left-handed diff threads will go into the body because you'll be able to see them from underneath the car, so that you can notice that they're left-handed and not be fiddling around, not being able to see where you're at. Anyway, so I'm going to stuff these in with the bolts, and then just like that, should be all done. So you can see this one, if we go left, it will loosen, right, it will tighten, and then the opposite at the opposite end. So if this one locks back up, hang on. That one's locked there, so we go right and it tightens, we go left and it loosens at the other end. Anyway, the point is that you can loosen the jam nuts and then rotate this in one direction, and it will either extend because both are going opposite to each other, or shrink the length of this rod. So genius little piece, and it may make the ride a little harsher because there's obviously no bush there, but you know, race car life, right? So with great skill and difficulty and a trolley jack, just wheel your new garbage diff straight under there and hope that nothing goes wrong. You don't bend up the bottom of your dust plates too badly. So slide it under there, get the panhard hooked on, the lower arms, the upper arms, and all that side, and then I'll do this side last. Got to put the springs in before you hook the struts up, the shocks up, otherwise you won't get them in. Alright, so slap your adjustable uppers in just like you would normal uppers. They could be a little tricky to get in there, having to cut the zip tie, hold everything, and blah blah blah. Maybe get a friend, but they look pretty fresh. So I'm going to get a wheel alignment on this car because the whole front end's different before I go to halfway hangs. So I'm going to adjust these on a 4-post hoist because I don't want to do it on the ground. And already the diff angle looks pretty good. So as it goes up, the lower arms will try and point the pinion down, and some of these uppers will level it back out again, which will likely move the whole diff slightly back, but that's okay. Alright, so there's all 4 arms in, so and the panhard rod. So next is the springs into their position, and then I'll attach this side first and the other side last. Probably going to be regrettable because the other side's harder. We'll see what I figure out. Sway bars will go on last, as will the handbrake cable. And yeah, don't forget your earth strap for some reason. Alright, so halfway through installing this this side, and talk about race car tolerances. I had to take the caliper off just to get the shock in. Pretty interesting. Anyway, just going to jack it up now. I actually wiped out a zip tie on this thing, so we'll keep going and see where we end up.